The priestesses laughed, a cold, mocking sound that sent chills down Igioma's spine. Ovia's protection means nothing to us, the leader hissed. We serve a greater power now. Before Igioma could react, one of the priestesses raised her hand, and a gust of wind whipped through the trees, knocking Ezen to the ground. Igioma staggered backward, clutching Nadazi tightly as the wind roared around them. But then, just as suddenly as the wind had risen, it stopped. The air grew still, and a heavy silence fell over the grove. And then, from the heart of the sacred land, Igioma's mind spun with the weight of Ezen's revelation. She wanted to trust the young priestess, but after learning about the hidden prophecy and the secrets Priestess Adana had kept, doubt clouded her thoughts. She needed answers, answers that only Ovia or the temple could provide. What do you mean by forces at work? Igioma asked cautiously. What are they planning? Ezen hesitated, then stepped inside the small hut. She glanced nervously toward the door, lowering her voice even further. Not all the priestesses are loyal to Ovia's will. Some believe that the power Nadazi holds can be harnessed for their own purposes. They want to use him to gain control of the river's blessings, to make themselves rulers over the village. Igioma's heart pounded. And Priestess Adana, does she know about this? She suspects it, Ezen admitted. But she's not as strong as she once was. She's losing her grip on the temple, and the other priestesses are growing bold. They know that the villagers are scared of your son, and they plan to use that fear to turn the people against you, to make it seem like Nadazi is a threat. Igioma's stomach churned with dread. Everything she had worked to protect, her son, her role as his mother, and her fragile connection to the village, was unraveling. She could feel the weight of the temple's influence pressing down on her, like a storm gathering strength. What do you want me to do? She asked, her voice tight with anxiety. Ezen took a deep breath. I don't have much time. If the other priestesses find out I'm helping you, they'll stop at nothing to silence me. But I believe that if you can bring Nadazi to the sacred grove, the heart of Ovia's power, you'll be able to commune with the river god more clearly. Ovia will protect you and guide you through this trial. It's the only way to ensure your son's future. Igioma's gaze flicked to Nadazi, who lay peacefully asleep on a mat in the corner of the room. The thought of taking him deeper into the sacred lands filled her with fear, but she knew there was no other choice. The temple was no longer a safe place, and the village was becoming more dangerous by the day. When should we go? Igioma asked, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. Ezen glanced out the window at the fading sunlight. Tonight. When the moon is high. We'll leave under the cover of darkness. The sacred grove is not far, but we must move quickly and avoid the temple's gaze. Igioma nodded, determination filling her heart. I'll be ready. As the village settled into the quiet of the night, Igioma prepared for the journey to the sacred grove. She packed only the essentials, water, a few herbs for protection, and a cloth to wrap Nadazi in. Her mind was racing, but her heart was focused on one thing, protecting her son. When the moon had risen high in the sky, casting a pale glow over the river, Ezen returned to Igioma's hut. She wore a simple cloak to disguise herself, and her eyes were sharp with urgency. Are you ready? She asked quietly. Igioma nodded, gently lifting Nadazi from his sleeping mat and wrapping him securely in a cloth on her back. The child stirred but did not wake, his small body warm against her. Together, they slipped into the night, moving silently through the narrow paths of the village. The only sounds were the soft rustling of the trees and the distant murmur of the river. Igioma's heart raced with each step, but she trusted Ezen to guide them safely. As they approached the outskirts of the village, Igioma felt a shift in the air. The trees grew taller, their branches thick with leaves, and the earth beneath their feet seemed to pulse with life. This was the edge of Ovia's domain, the sacred lands where the river god's power was strongest. We're almost there, Ezen whispered, her voice barely audible. The grove is just beyond that ridge. But before they could reach the ridge, a sudden movement in the shadows caught Igioma's attention. She froze, her eyes scanning the darkness. What is it? Ezen whispered, following Igioma's gaze. There, in the shadows of the trees, stood a figure. At first, Igioma thought it might be a villager or a fisherman returning late from the river. But as the figure stepped forward, the moonlight revealed a familiar face. It was one of the priestesses from the temple. Ezen gasped in shock. No, it's them. Without warning, 3 more priestesses emerged from the darkness, surrounding Igioma and Ezen. Their faces were cold, their eyes gleaming with something dark and dangerous. You thought you could run, one of them sneered, stepping closer. The child belongs to the temple. You cannot keep him from us. Fear surged through Igioma's chest, but she stood her ground, clutching Nadazi protectively. I will not let you take him. The leader of the group smiled cruelly. You are no match for us, Corper. You are meddling in things you do not understand. Ezen stepped forward, her eyes blazing with defiance. Leave her alone. Ovia will protect her. You cannot defy the river god. The priestesses laughed, a cold, mocking sound that sent chills down Igioma's spine. Ovia's protection means nothing to us, the leader hissed. We serve a greater power now. Before Igioma could react, one of the priestesses raised her hand, and a gust of wind whipped through the trees, knocking Ezen to the ground. Igioma staggered backward, clutching Nadazi tightly as the wind roared around them. But then, just as suddenly as the wind had risen, it stopped. The air grew still, and a heavy silence fell over the grove. And then, from the heart of the sacred land, a deep, resonant voice echoed through the night, a voice Igioma recognized at once. Ovia, she whispered, her heart pounding. The priestesses froze, their eyes wide with fear. The ground beneath them began to tremble, and the river's waters roared in the distance, rising and falling with a rhythm that seemed to shake the very earth.
You dare defy me?
Ovia's voice thundered, filled with power and anger.
The child is under my protection. You will not harm him.
The priestesses fell to their knees, their faces pale with terror. Forgive us, great Ovia, the leader stammered, her voice shaking. But Ovia's voice cut her off.
Leave this place, or face my wrath.
Without another word, the priestesses scrambled to their feet and fled into the darkness, their cloaks billowing behind them as they disappeared into the trees. Igioma stood frozen, her heart racing as the power of Ovia's presence lingered in the air. She could feel the river god watching them, his protective gaze resting on her and Nadazi. Thank you, she whispered, her voice trembling with relief. Ezen slowly stood, her eyes wide with awe. You did it, she whispered. Ovia saved us. Igioma nodded, her breath still coming in short gasps. But as the fear began to fade, a new realization settled over her. The battle was far from over. As the first rays of dawn began to break through the canopy of trees, Igioma and Ezen finally reached the sacred grove. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and fresh leaves, and the soft glow of the morning sun bathed the clearing in a golden light. The grove was a place of ancient power. Towering trees encircled the space, their roots twisting and intertwining like the veins of the land itself. At the center of the grove was a small, bubbling spring, a source of life and power that flowed directly from the heart of the river. Igioma felt the energy of the place wash over her, filling her with a sense of calm and purpose. She knelt by the spring, gently lowering Nadazi onto the soft grass. The child stirred, his eyes fluttering open as he gazed up at his mother. Here, Ezen whispered, gesturing to the spring. This is where you will commune with Ovia. The water is sacred, it will help you understand the path ahead. Igioma nodded, her heart pounding with anticipation. She cupped her hands in the cool water, letting it trickle over her fingers before gently pouring it over Nadazi's head. The child giggled softly, his eyes shining with delight as the water touched him. But then, as the last drops of water fell, something extraordinary happened. The spring began to glow, a soft, radiant light that seemed to pulse with life. The air around them shimmered, and the sound of the river filled the grove, even though they were miles away from the water's edge. Igioma gasped, her eyes wide with wonder. What's happening? Ezen stepped back, her voice hushed with awe. Ovia is with us. And then, from the glowing water, a figure began to emerge. It was tall and shimmering, formed of water and light, with the unmistakable presence of power. The figure's face was serene yet commanding, its form both fluid and solid at the same time. Igioma recognized it immediately. The river god, Ovia, had come to them. The air in the grove became thick with magic. Nadazi, still on the ground, reached out his tiny hand toward the figure, as though instinctively knowing who it was. The god gazed down at the child, its expression softening with an almost paternal affection.
Igioma.
Ovia's voice echoed through the grove, deep and resonant, like the flowing of a mighty river. You have fulfilled the prophecy. Igioma knelt before the river god, her heart trembling with a mixture of awe and fear. Great Ovia, she whispered, her voice shaking. What is to become of my son? And what of the villagers who fear him? Ovia's eyes glistened with a divine light as he spoke.
Your son, Nadazi, is no ordinary child. He carries the power of the river within him, the strength of the waters that sustain this land, the life that flows through the village. His destiny is intertwined with the fate of all who live here.
Igioma's heart swelled with a mother's pride, but her mind was filled with questions. But the people, they fear him. Some of the priestesses seek to control him. What can I do to protect him? Ovia's gaze darkened slightly.
There are always those who seek power for themselves, even among those who are meant to serve the gods. But know this, Nadazi is under my protection, as are you. The priestesses who plot against you have lost their way, blinded by ambition. They will answer to me.
A sense of relief washed over Igioma, but Ovia's words also carried a warning. There were greater challenges ahead, more dangers lurking in the shadows of the village and the temple.
I will not let harm come to your son,
Ovia continued, his voice strong and unwavering.
But his journey will not be easy. The villagers will soon see the truth of his power, and when that time comes, you must guide him. His path is not one of war or destruction, but of balance.
Igioma nodded, though the weight of the responsibility pressed heavily on her shoulders. I will do everything in my power to protect him, great Ovia. Ovia smiled, a soft and fleeting expression, before turning his gaze to Nadazi.
He will be a beacon of prosperity if guided well. The waters will bless the village, and fish will be plentiful, but only if the balance is kept. There are those who would upset that balance, those who would bring ruin.
Igioma's heart clenched. How will I know who to trust? Ovia's form shimmered, becoming more fluid, as though the god was merging back into the waters of the spring.
Listen to the river, Igioma. Trust the flow of the waters. In time, all will be revealed.
With those final words, Ovia's figure dissolved into the glowing water, leaving the grove in silence. The light from the spring slowly dimmed, and the soft murmur of the river returned to its peaceful rhythm. The powerful presence that had filled the air gradually faded, leaving only the tranquil beauty of the sacred grove behind. Igioma knelt there for a long time, her thoughts swirling like the river itself. The encounter with Ovia had given her hope, but also a deep sense of responsibility. She was no longer just a corper fulfilling her national service, she was now the mother of a divine being, a child whose destiny was linked to the very survival of the village. Come, Ezen said softly, placing a hand on Igioma's shoulder. We should return before anyone notices we're gone. Igioma stood, cradling Nadazi in her arms. The child looked up at her with wide, innocent eyes, completely unaware of the magnitude of the moment that had just passed. But Igioma knew that their lives had been forever changed. As they began the journey back to the village, the moon hung high in the sky, casting a silver glow on the path ahead. The air was cool, and the trees whispered softly in the breeze. Igioma felt the presence of Ovia lingering in the air, watching over them as they made their way through the sacred lands. By the time Igioma and Ezen reached the outskirts of the village, the first light of dawn was beginning to streak the sky with hues of pink and gold. The village was still quiet, with only a few early risers beginning their daily routines. We must be careful, Ezen whispered as they approached Igioma's hut. The priestesses will not give up so easily, even after what happened tonight. Igioma nodded, her heart heavy with the knowledge that more challenges lay ahead. She gently placed Nadazi on his mat, brushing a soft kiss on his forehead. The child yawned, then drifted back into a peaceful sleep. What do we do now? Igioma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ezin hesitated for a moment, then sighed. We wait. Ovia has spoken, and the power of the river is on your side. But the priestesses, they will try to manipulate the villagers. They will spread lies, saying that Nadasi is dangerous, that he will bring harm to the village. Igioma's hands clenched into fists. She couldn't stand the thought of her son being feared or hated by the people he was meant to protect. But Ovia said that in time, the truth will be revealed, Ezin continued. The villagers will see Nadasi's power for what it truly is. You must be patient and strong. The balance will return. As the sun began to rise, casting warm light over the village, Igioma felt a sense of renewed strength. She knew that the road ahead would be filled with trials, but she was ready to face them. For her son. For the village. And for the balance that Ovia had entrusted to her. The days that followed were tense. The whispers began almost immediately after Igioma's return from the sacred grove. The villagers, always wary of the power of the river god, were now openly suspicious of Nadasi. The fear that had been planted by the priestesses began to take root, spreading like wildfire through the village. Some said that the child was cursed, that his presence would bring drought and famine instead of the blessings Ovia had promised. Others claimed that Igioma was using dark magic to control the river, twisting its power for her own gain. Igioma did her best to ignore the rumors, but each day brought new challenges. When she went to the market, she noticed the way people avoided her, casting furtive glances her way and whispering behind her back. Even the children who had once played with Nadasi seemed to shy away, their parents pulling them closer whenever Igioma passed by. She knew that the priestesses were behind it all. Their influence over the villagers was strong, and they were using that power to turn the people against her. But Igioma refused to back down. She knew that Ovia's protection was real, and she believed in the prophecy that her son would bring prosperity to the village. Still, the weight of the village's fear pressed heavily on her. Each day felt like a battle, and Igioma wondered how long she could continue to fight alone. But she wasn't alone. One evening, as the sun dipped low in the sky, casting a golden glow over the village, Igioma sat outside her hut, watching Nadasi play with his simple wooden toys. His laughter was light, innocent, and unaware of the tension that had gripped the village. But Igioma could feel the weight of the stares, the whispers that never seemed to stop. Just as she was lost in her thoughts, she noticed a figure approaching from the path. It was a man, tall, with kind eyes and a calm presence. He was not someone Igioma recognized from the village, and she immediately felt her guard rise. "Good evening," the man greeted, his voice gentle but confident. "I hope I am not disturbing you." Igioma stood, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Who are you?" "My name is Obina," he said, bowing his head slightly in respect. "I am a traveling herbalist. I have recently come to your village, and I have heard much about you and your son." Igioma tensed at his words, wondering if he had come to accuse her like so many others. But Obina's expression remained calm and understanding, as though he could sense her unease. "I am not here to judge you," he continued, his voice soft. "I have seen many strange and powerful things in my travels, and I believe your son is a blessing, not a curse. The villagers may be afraid now, but that will change in time." Igioma studied him carefully. There was something about Obina that seemed different from the others. While the villagers had been quick to fear Nadasi, this man appeared to accept the boy's power without hesitation. She could feel a sense of warmth and sincerity radiating from him. "What do you know of the river god, Ovia?" Igioma asked, her voice steady but curious. Obina smiled, folding his arms across his chest as he settled onto a nearby stone. "I know that Ovia is powerful and ancient, a god who has watched over these lands for centuries. His waters bring life, but they must also be respected. The villagers have always feared what they cannot understand. But you and your son, your connection to Ovia is deeper than they realize." Igioma felt a flicker of hope. "Why are you telling me this? Why would you help me, a stranger?" Obina's smile faded slightly as his expression turned more serious. "I've seen fear destroy communities, and I've seen what happens when people let their distrust fester. But I've also seen hope, and I believe that Nadasi is the key to a better future for this village." I have no hidden motives, only a desire to help where I can. He glanced at Nadesi, who was now watching the exchange with wide, curious eyes. The boy is special, Ijeoma. His power will bring balance, just as Ovia intended. But you will need allies, people who believe in him and his role in the village's future. Ijeoma felt a lump in her throat, realizing how isolated she had felt over the past weeks. Having someone who understood, who believed in Nadesi, felt like a lifeline. Thank you, Ijeoma said quietly, her voice full of gratitude. I don't know what to do. The priestesses are turning the villagers against us. Even if Ovia has promised to protect us, it feels like the whole world is closing in. Obina nodded sympathetically. I will stay in the village for a while. I can help you. The villagers trust me as a healer, and perhaps, in time, they will come to see the truth about your son. But be cautious. The priestesses will not give up their influence easily. Ijeoma sighed, a mixture of relief and anxiety washing over her. She had a new ally now, but the challenges ahead still loomed large. Thank you, Obina, she said again, her voice steadier now. I will be careful, and I'm grateful for your support. Obina smiled, rising to his feet. We'll take this one step at a time. For now, rest. You've been carrying a heavy burden, but you're not alone anymore. As Obina walked back toward the village, Ijeoma watched him, feeling a sense of calm for the first time in what felt like weeks. She wasn't sure how much she could trust him yet, but his words had given her hope. Perhaps there was a way forward after all.